Hi, my name is Prabhu. I head the CyberMedia Research and the head industry intelligence group there. And today in this webinar, welcome to this webinar. This is a pertinent topic that we are talking about. We are looking at smartphone trends in the context of the pandemic. Not much has been spoken about in terms of the actual implications of the change in consumer behavior, so to say. And we thought this is a opportune moment to reflect back on the last year or so and see what's really changed. And essentially, while doing that, we wanted to see how people like confined to their homes, how they are really turning to their smartphones for connectivity, collaboration, and content consumption as such. India has always been a smartphone first nation, and it is in that context that this webinar becomes important as well. I do have a quick deck to share with you just to set the context right, and then we could move forward from there. Yeah. So one of the first things, we at CyberMedia Research, what we have seen is there has been an inflection in terms of time spent on the smartphone. If you were to see in the pre-pandemic phase, there were uh, close to 5 hours on average being spent on the phones. But there has been a 22% spike since then. That's as of last year, and that's close to 6 to 7% on average. Spent on the 6 to 7 hours spent on the phone, and now this year it's again increased by another 15%. And what this translates into is increased usage, and usage not just for connectivity, but not for collaboration also, but also for content consumption as such. And what's interesting, if we move to the next slide, we will see that this is all being fueled by the digital natives as such. These are consumers in the age group of 18 to 24. They are the true internet users as such. They are driving content creation as well as consumption on the smartphones. Yeah. And when you look at the consumption patterns, what really stands out is music, movies, episodic content, user-generated content as such. And when you look in terms of user-generated content, it's the explosive growth that we have seen in new platforms which have come, which have given expression to these content creators as such. So the smartphone is enabling both content creation as well as consumption. And across price tiers, what we have seen is a dramatic increase in the smartphone quality in terms of the specs, which are enabling and fueling these experiences as such. And talk really about who these digital natives are. As I mentioned, they are consumers in the age group of 18 to 24. They are mostly premium smartphone users. That's what our research has indicated. That's the profile of this consumer. They mostly watch OTT, on over the top networks like Prime, Disney Hotstar, and so on. They are very high on user-generated content. They create as well as consume on platforms such as Instagram Reels or others, and they're also high on gaming. And what's interesting is this is all made possible on the smartphone. If you were to look back a year ago, we saw that there was a growth in short form content. Now, what we have seen as part of our research here is that there has been a 67% spike in terms of long form content. What I mean by that is increased time spent. That's close to 2 hours on average being spent now just on long form content, which consumers are really taking in. And that's the time spent on the smartphones. Earlier, it was like short form content a year ago, which was like 30 minutes or lesser. But now that's really grown up like anything. And that also indicates, again, the pivotal importance of smartphones in the case of consumers. Yeah. Yeah, and what's interesting again for these consumers, whether it be the digital natives in the age group of 18 to 24, or even others as such, those who are beyond 24, like, we call them the digital dependents or the digital laggards, depending on the age group that they are in. What's interesting is that their sense of perception has changed in terms of what they really want from the smartphones. And as I alluded earlier, since we are a smartphone first nation, and smartphone OEMs have really been pushing, camera innovations and battery innovations, and really fulfilling those consumer aspirations. So those are now not so high on consumer demand. They continue to be. That aspiration for the best and the brightest always is there. But then also this amount of time that we have spent at home over the last year and a half, that also has increased, to the point that now they are really looking into audio and video as a key factor. And they are able to really, from a consumer perspective, really able to appreciate and enhance the nuances within that. And this was not the case before. Whenever we have looked at this from a research perspective, what we have definitely seen as a trend is that, smartphone camera, battery life, and audio also figures in the list, like after storage and all. But what we have seen for 2 years now is that while that satisfaction with what OEMs are pushing for in terms of meaningful innovation, that's fulfilling that consumer thirst. And now it's more of, given the amount of time we are spending at home, the quest for what I call as immersive experiences, that's coming to the fore, and that's more in terms of audio and video, which completes the experience for them. They have superior cameras, whichever price range you look at, battery, which is really there across price bands, and it's this component which is also coming to the fore. And let's just talk once more, like if we can move forward. And as I mentioned, it's all about the immersive experiences, which is really key to the consumers across price segments, and mostly in the premium segment. If I were to say, this is what's really important for the consumer, and that's something which our research now has shown for 2 years in a row. We started it in the initial phase of pandemic, and we followed it up with another research this year, and it's been pointing to those trends only. So with that introduction, what I wanted to do was to quickly introduce the panel that we have here. It's an esteemed panel. I have my friend Navnit Nakra. He's VP and Chief Strategy Officer at OnePlus. Navnit, great to have you.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's a pleasure being here and lovely to connect with you again.
Thanks so much. We have Lokesh Chauhan. He's a CTO at Eros now. Yeah,
hey guys.
Lokesh. Yeah. We have Pankaj Kedia, Managing Director, Emerging Markets at Dolby. He's joining us via audio.
And hi, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Hi.
We do have Gaurav Chaudhary. He's a founder and CEO at Earshot Media. That's a podcast firm. Gaurav, I believe you're also on audio today, right?
That's right. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, so really appreciate all of you. We were supposed to be joined by Siddharth Roy. He is the CEO of Hangama. Unfortunately, he had some commitments because of which he couldn't make time. But we did interact with him also, and we will play that later on as we move forward. To start with, Navneet, if I can, bring you into the conversation. Premium experiences are what you're known for from a OnePlus point of view. If you were to see what are those trends, from a OnePlus perspective, which you have seen in terms of content creation and consumption over the last year or so?
That's a great question to get started with. And once again, Prabhu, wonderful to be here, and my warm hello to Lokesh, Pankaj, everybody on the team. I think as we look back at the pandemic, and I won't say we are completely through the phase right now, but what is interesting, Prabhu and everyone, over the last year and a half is that the community of users which are using smartphones, especially the OnePlus cohort, which is a slightly younger community, I think content creation and consumption has been at an all-time high. So Prabhu, when you ask me what are some of the premium users or what are the content, I would say consumption happening, I would say there is a heavy shift from the so-called nuanced content to a lot of generic content which is being consumed. I think in your report you spoke about long-form content, but I'll share with you with our dipstick and community feedback. More and more users are studying at home, they're getting entertained at home, they're connecting with family and friends at home, they are gaming at home, they're getting into community collaboration projects at home. And a lot of this requires the ability to create and consume content almost in a manner which is better than a multitasking. So I would believe that we are seeing all varieties of content being created. From a OnePlus perspective, one of the things that we have cherished ourselves is the ability to provide very superior camera quality in our phones. And I think our property called the Shot on OnePlus, Prabhu, which you are aware of, has taken itself to a different dimension in the last year and a half. A lot of consumers are now taking shots at home, outside home, micro, big picture, panoramic views, I would say, right from Kulu Manali to their home garden. So I think the Shot on OnePlus community and digital photography has seen a boost like never before. And on that respect, Prabhu, very happy to share with you that the phones that we launched earlier this year, the flagship 9 series, had a collaboration with the Swedish company Hasselblad. So
Yeah.
Hasselblad today, to our community on content, especially digital photography, has really aided and brought a new color and life to their content creation. So I'm going to pause there and back to you, Prabhu.
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, like you mentioned those camera innovation, and I have tried the latest phones as well from OnePlus, and I really appreciate that collaboration there. It's been amazing as such. The one thing which I said, as I mentioned, you have been pioneering those innovations as such, right? Like in imaging or in battery, if you were to even look at the design aesthetics, that
Right.
they really stand out as such, and today, if you look at it, for the consumer, especially in the premium segment, it's the smartphone is a lifestyle statement as such. They really look for it, and you're delivering on all of those. One quick thing which I wanted to check: when you look at this trend which I alluded to, and what our research points out in terms of
Right.
audio and video, how do you see that? How do you bring that into the overall OnePlus experience as such?
Oh, I think that's a great point. So, Prabhu, two or three things are happening on, I would say, the sophistication of technology and what the community is feeding back to us. So, first and foremost, I think uh, quality of imaging, quality of audio using AI and ML tools has gone to a different level. I think with our new Buds Pro launch that we did, we are actually doing an audio profile of consumers so that they can speak and listen better. With the Hasselblad camera, which you've experienced, there's even an expand mode, which used to be
Yeah.
earlier in the 35mm Hasselblad cameras, which is now coming to digital photography. But last but not the least, the fundamentals of the smartphone have become more, I would say, utility driven. And I'll explain
Mm.
that to you. Today, consumers are saying that if this is a must have and always on device on me, do I look at a device which has a better camera, better
Mm.
screen fluidity, better battery life, ability to charge faster, and almost a 99.99% uptime? So today, the responsibility is far greater on us, I would
Yeah.
say, or I would say that the opportunity is much greater for all players like us, that how do you empower technology across these sides? On the consumption side, I think you mentioned that we have 5 hours of consumption a day. I think we are the
Mm.
highest in the world when we
Yeah.
look at the consumption, not only on the OnePlus device, but the subscription, what is happening on OTT. We are touching 800 to 810 million subscribers in the country. And by the way, smartphones are barely 400 to 450 million in the country today. So which means that whether I have a smartphone or a feature phone, or I have a laptop or a tablet, I think I'm subscribing. Last but not the least, the appreciation for better technology into entertainment is high. So the podcasts, the webinar, the education, multiplayer gaming, I think all of this, the industry is working at stronger collaboration. Prabhu, very happy to share with you that we even have a gaming mode on our phones, and the OnePlus
Mhm.
9R that we launched is actually designed for gamers. So if you have a 9R phone, if you have a OnePlus Smart TV, if you have a nice watch, you can actually integrate this ecosystem to ensure that people have that immersive experience. I
Got
hope
it.
I've answered the question on a few elements, which is just outside the device as well.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds good. Pankaj, if I can have you, talk in terms of how Dolby is really, uh, leveraging the technology as such to deliver this immersive audio video experiences as such. That's something we saw. And in the new normal, for a person like me who's sitting at home, I am listening into the audio much better than before. It's not just a case of saying I can hear you, but it's also appreciating those nuances, really appreciating the what the creator has put in terms of the music as such. So given all of that, how do you see Dolby playing that role in leveraging technology as such?
Thanks, Prabhu, for having me. And sorry, I don't have video right now. Uh, but yeah, I think in terms of Dolby, I mean, what we've been doing for about 60 years is really enhancing entertainment experiences. And what we've been working, from a mobile perspective, is to really bring in a revolutionary mobile audio experience and transforming that from a flat stereo experience to something that's much more multidimensional, much more immersive. And from a technology perspective, we work across the ecosystem. We work with great partners like OnePlus. I mean, as Navnit was saying about, the whole focus is on the experience, and whether it is the camera, the screen, the audio experience. I think that shows where the consumer is focused. And given the rise in consumption, as we were talking about, and it's across a wide variety of content, from audio video content to music to podcast to audio chat rooms now. So there's so much consumption that happens on the mobile. It's really imperative that, and we see consumers really demanding and wanting a better experience, and they vote with their money, right? Every time they upgrade their phone, they're voting with their wallet as to, hey, I want this new thing on my phone. And from a technology perspective, what we do is we enhance the experience, but what does it really mean from a consumer perspective? What does the consumer get? What do we mean when we say we enhance this experience? So I think simple things like clarity of audio, being able to hear all the different sounds. When a content creator is designing with his show, or a Netflix show, or Disney Plus Hotstar show, or anything that they are watching, or something from Eros that they're designing, they go into great depths and great effort to design the sound, place different elements, and how do you ensure that the consumer is able to hear all of that back? Whether it is music, how do you provide a higher level of clarity, a higher level of depth, so that the end result should be that the listener becomes closer to the artist, is getting closer to the music, getting closer to the action that's happening on screen. So our technology really, the enhancements that we are doing with mobile phones specifically, is really bringing consumers closer to the content, closer to the artist. So that sense that maybe I'm in the studio when the song is being played right around me, instead of feeling that, oh, it's kind of somewhere in the distant, or feeling that sense of separation, but really connecting much more deeply. And the content, if you think of something like music, it's a deeply emotional experience, right? We all, if we were to tell which is your favorite song, we'll all have a list of favorite songs, right? It's something that is very emotional to us.
Yeah.
So in terms of enhancing that experience, and whether it is new content or going back and reprocessing old content and enhancing that, I think there is a tremendous value. And as we work across the ecosystem, and the way Dolby brings value to the experience is pretty unique, because what we do, we are actually working across the entire ecosystem. And what we define as our ecosystems is, it starts with the content creators. So really equipping the content creators to be able to create these experiences, manage these experiences, as to knowing how this will sound on a particular device. So to be able to get that information, working with the service providers like Eros, to really deliver that experience to consumers, and then finally working with device manufacturers like Navnit, to really make sure those devices are absolutely surpassing consumer expectation, and really creating that wow moment the moment they unwrap it and experience that thing. And as Navneet talks about, there's a growing trend to subscription. So again,
Yeah.
it's not just any more free content, Now, there is a need for, subscription, paying for subscription. And we are seeing that some of the work that we've done, the research we've seen is like people are a high, like over 90% people are willing to pay for higher quality. Over 90% people are willing to upgrade devices for better experiences. So I think it's quite overwhelming in terms of what consumers are expecting. And it's great that the industry is being able to deliver that, and then we can play a role in that.
Exactly. Yeah. I appreciate that what you're saying, and that shift is happening. That's what we are seeing in our research. From a freemium only mode, people are willing to pay more. They are willing to go for that premium experience as such, and that's where the subscription also is coming in. Lokesh, if I could have you in here, how are you actually seeing those trends, the pandemic related trends over the last year or so? If I may ask, how are you resolving for user engagement as such, user retention, and more importantly, user growth in the context of smartphones as such? What are those trends which you have seen?
Sure. So from the context of things, I'll actually start before pandemic. So the year before pandemic was one of the most interesting years. We actually worked very closely with both OnePlus and Dolby to deliver a large part of our content catalog in Atmos enabled state. And then we also realized working with Samsung that things are moving more and more from their front also towards enabling Atmos at hand. So by the time this pandemic came in, we were already live with OnePlus. We were already doing a lot of content library updates for enabling access with Dolby 5.1 or with Atmos if possible on newer titles. So that gave us a very clear roadmap ahead that the investment on part of audio profile and video quality in itself is going to drive higher engagement levels for us. The stuff that we can see from data is very clear that the intent to watch things in a living room versus a handheld is increasing. And obviously, this also includes the fact that we serve more mature markets, developed countries, not just India. So this is a trend that we already knew existed on those markets, but India is catching up very soon and very fast. Is this advent happening with the newer STBs that most manufacturers are pushing out from their side? The consumption is increasingly happening on large screens. When you ask this question specifically around focus on mobile, mobile is doing good. The engagement levels retain very, very strongly on mobile, but that is very much geared towards a shorter content, 30 minutes or so context. They perform better on mobile. For a large screen experience is more geared towards, lying in the couch and enjoying for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, those are my understandings and my experiences specifically around that. Pandemic gave us a huge boost in part of user acquisition, but holding on is a tightrope effort. We have to ensure that we are able to churn out enough quality material, which is new, engaging, fresh, and has all the bells and whistles on part of experience involved. Pandemic wave 2 hasn't been very great kind on that part. A lot of our ended rollout plans have taken a hit on those lines. But yeah, I think things are coming back to normal now. We're gonna, look at a much more flush content rollout calendar, which is gonna be a little more capable from a couple of years back. So this is predominantly I'm talking about audio and video experiences that we are pushing hard. And Dolby has been a phenomenal partner. I mean, we have worked very closely with them on how to do more, pushing the experimental profile like AC4 has been one of my intended projects. There is definitely not many takers on that on the device side as yet, but I believe that's a great way forward. The investments on AR and VR all are coming, but I believe first we have to stabilize to an extent that the immersive experience can basically take place. And that is where the gap between the hardware being present in itself is huge for now.
Got you. Gaurav, podcast, that's something which is now, coming to on its own. Digital natives are really driving it forward. They are people who are really dependent on the smartphones for, as I mentioned, like content consumption as such. They get the news on their smartphones. If, from your perspective, what's the uptick you have seen over the last year or so? And within that, how I do understand that audio is important for the consumers in this segment, but what is that you are saying? How important is audio playing a role here in terms of the immersive experiences that we are speaking about? Gaurav?
Yeah, so thanks, Prabhu. Well, I'll take it from a point that you mentioned in the deck. That's quite insightful for our line of business also, where you said that there has been a 67% spike in long form content consumption to 2 hours or more, and that kinds of reinforces our belief and what we also have been seeing from our own data logs. And podcast is essentially audio storytelling, which is, while many people say that it's quite new in India, so it may or may not take off, or it is still very far away from maturity. But we would like to believe, and that is what we have been witnessing from our own experience, is that probably we are nearing very close to the high noon of audio market in India, but digital podcast. And this is very different from radio because this is not appointment listening, and Indians are waking up to the convenience as well as the power of audio storytelling, in a digital form, which is essentially what podcasts do. What it does, what podcasts do, and what conventional radio cannot do, is that podcast actually empowers the listener to choose whenever she wants to, and whatever she wants to listen to. And unlike video, podcasts on the handheld is actually a non-screen based medium, so it keeps your hands free, it keeps your eyes free, so and so it brings in that additional convenience of multitasking. So you can essentially be listening to audio storytelling or whatever you want to, as compared to conventional analog radio, which is appointment listening. So in conventional radio, if you, for instance, missed the 9 o'clock bulletin, you've missed it altogether. But in this case, you can actually go and listen whenever you want to, whatever length you want to, which is something that it's delivering great sense of empowerment to the consumer. One, it allows you to multitask. It's non-screen based. It keeps your hands free, it keeps your eyes free, and you can do whatever you want. You can listen whatever you want to, whenever you want to, and doing something else at the same time. Which is what we are also discovering from our own content. And in our case, we are a little different also because we do immersive deep dive storytelling, audio storytelling in Indian languages, and we are in the original space. So we come to think of us as a blend of Netflix and HBO for the years. We are not a YouTube, for instance. Anyone and everyone cannot record something on a phone and post it on our platform. Whatever we do, we produce it ourselves, or we commission it exclusively ourselves. So it brings me to another point, which is also someone the other day asked me, isn't podcasting recording something on your phone and hosting it? So my response was a little basic. I said, if that were true, then everybody with a video cam would have been a filmmaker, or everybody with a pen would have been an author. That is not the case. Audio storytelling requires it's a very evolved craft. Podcasting is a very evolved craft, and we are in the line of scripted audio storytelling as well as what we call audio documentaries. It's a craft that requires skill. It's a craft that requires very high quality writing. It's a craft that requires very high quality scripting, research, journalistic experience, and deep reportage, among others. And I think we are rapidly moving towards a very mature podcasting listening market in India, because it's not just about English, it's not just about Hindi. I mean, from a content consumption point of view, we would generally like to categorize HSM, the Hindi speaking market, as the biggest market because it covers geographically, it covers 11 states and tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions of people. But actually the real immersive experience that people are getting is in the languages, and it's not just in the so-called official languages. In our case, for instance, one of the first languages we decided to go, first set of languages also included Bhojpuri. Now Bhojpuri may not be a quote unquote an official language in India, but it's an international language in its own respect. It's spoken widely in at least 4 states in India. as well as internationally in overseas places, including the Netherlands, Mauritius, and very large parts in the Caribbean. So this is what audio actually does. It has broken down barriers, language barriers. It tells stories in the language that people actually not just want to listen to, but also that they think in. While most of us speak in English, but many of us have different mother tongues. While we think in the mother tongues, we might be speaking in English for functional reasons. Audio storytelling in Indian languages have actually dismantled those language barriers. And it's a kind of democratization of the content listening market in India, which is going to grow very, very rapidly. Just to give you a few figures, at the end of 2019, December 2019, there were only 40 million podcast listeners in India. By 2020, it went to 57.6 million a month. And by 2023, we are projected to, we as in India is projected to have a podcast listening market of 173 million. But by the pace that what we are going, I think we are going to overachieve the target by many months before that. So that kind of tells you where audio storytelling, a lot of great content, high quality content is going to come in. It's also going to empower a lot of creators. And with the advent of the new smartphones, where audio quality technologically as it's reaching a completely different level, and for us, we are thanks to Pankaj and team, we are India's first Dolby Atmos powered podcasting platform. We are giving a completely different immersive experience that is going to get more and more mainstream. And once people get accustomed to listening to, say, for instance, a Dolby enabled Dolby Atmos powered immersive audio experience, he or she would not like to go to anything else. It's like you can divide the world into two parts. One, those who have seen the Taj Mahal, one, those who haven't. Once we have seen the Taj Mahal, you know what it stands for. Likewise, once you have experienced something like an Atmos or a similar technology, that is going to get more and more mainstream. So, and as things move to the handheld, it only empowers the audio content listener.
That's a great point. And Navnit, I would love to bring you in here, like, what Gaurav was mentioning about democratization as such, from a OnePlus philosophy point of view, like, how do you see democratization happening, both in terms of the consumers as well as the content creators as well? And I'm talking in terms of price tiers and all of that. How do you make innovation accessible for everyone who's looking for premium experiences, but maybe at a lower price tier as such, So how do you make that jump as such?
Thanks, Prabhu. I think for me, that's a rather easy answer. We have great partners like Dolby Labs. And I think one of the easiest things that happens is on such critical partnerships where we have the best in the world, where Dolby Labs coming on to OnePlus devices, I think users immediately start seeing the impact of various, I would say, audio features which are coming in. So I think on the audio side, we have been very fortunate to have this partnership for a long time. Apart from that, I think every panelist mentioned about the power of ensuring that more and more users are aware about what their devices, what their platforms are. So today, the more we speak about the capabilities of camera, the more we speak about how optical image stabilization, how better quality, I would say, videography or photography is coming in. I think that education is happening through us. On the democratization piece, Prabhu, in all honesty, OnePlus has always believed that we need to bring great devices to consumers at a price point which enables them to do much more. So we are here in all essence to democratize technology. Now, whether it's the smartphone, whether it's the smart TV, whether it's an audio device, I think so. The attempt always is, can we bring a better price point closer to the community? The other piece, Prabhu, also is we listen into our community a lot. As a OnePlus user, you have access to the forums page, something on Short on OnePlus, something on audio, something on content, something on the Red Cable Club membership program. And once in a while, we dip in and we ask, what would the consumers like to see? In the past, we've gone to users and said, do you want an audio jack? At times, we've asked, do you want a gaming mode? At times, we've gone and asked, what do you need on your subscription plan? And I think one part of democratizing is also going back to the community and learning from them. So apart from great technology, leaning into what the community is saying and listening, and being very fortunate to have great partners like I mentioned, Dolby and the others who are there on the panel. I think that is our limited attempt to democratize. Last but not the least, I think, Prabhu, one has to understand where the Indian community is growing into, right?
Right.
And no matter how much consumption is happening, the Indian consumer is always looking at what is called a total cost of ownership over the lifetime of the product. And Indian consumer is far more evolved compared to many of the Western markets because she knows that if I bring in a $200 to $1,000 device at home, she would want, or the family would want, a full utilization till the life of the product. And that is why great customer service and great device longevity brings that confidence into the consumer and the consumer family, saying that, I'm happy to go back to this brand. I'm happy to go back to the subscription service. I'm happy to associate myself with this technology because it delivers value over a period of time. So I think we are trying to be as customizable to India as possible. And that, in a way, is trying to democratize as closely as we can. Back to you, Prabhu.
Yeah, I mean, all of what you said makes sense. It's a hyper-competitive market, and when you listen into the consumers the way you do, it really helps you innovate upon those features. And this is a market where the consumers are the ones who actually are the best brand ambassadors as such. We trust our loved ones to, really tell us which is the phone one must go for. And that's where all of this becomes important as such, so really appreciate those insights as such. Pankaj, again, if you were to just switch, we spoke about the consumption patterns. If we can talk about the content creation part, and again, how Dolby is democratizing, creativity as such, how are you really playing that role in terms of enabling content creators to create and deliver, immersive audio experiences as such?
As we've been talking, that there is this significant increase in content consumption, and we've talked about that happening across different content types. But also, what is happening is there are different listening experiences, or we can call them use cases. So people listen to them on their smartphone, on both speakers. People are connecting headphones. People are connecting earbuds. TWS. People are connecting external speakers. They're streaming onto their living room devices. So it's really, as the number of people, as consumption grows up, what is happening, you're actually reaching a lot more consumers now, many more consumers than you were before. And also, which means you're also now getting into many different types of use cases, platforms, device capabilities. So that there is a lot more complexity to deal with now, in terms of what content creators and platforms have to deal with. On the other hand, as and Navnit has been talking about how the device capability has constantly been improving. Device manufacturers are innovating constantly, bringing in new capabilities, whether it is, on various aspects, including the audio and video capabilities, on these devices. So that really becomes an opportunity for content creators as to, how do I leverage this enhanced device capability? Because if they don't, then it's a missed opportunity in that sense. So we see content creators, we see the services now really keen to leverage the increased device capability. But at the same time, that brings in a lot of complexity in terms of their workflows, because they are not just now creating for a type of screen, they're creating for multiple screens, they're creating for the living room, they're creating for the mobile, and for the PC. So there are many different use cases. So the solutions that we work with, the tools that we provide, the know-how that we work with the industry, is to really enable them to be able to do that. So one example I'll give you is, we have now a way to, when content creators are, say, creating a song, mixing a song in Dolby Atmos, we have a way for them to be able to encode what we call Atmos headphone metadata, which means that the experience can be customized for headphones. So it's going to play differently on the speakers on the device, because the speakers have a different profile and the headphones have a different profile. So with the same content, you can customize that experience between playing it on speakers or playing it on headphones. And that starts giving the content creator a lot of control. They don't have to guess like, oh, I don't know how this is going to sound on a pair of headphones, right? We can actually start giving them a lot of control in terms of, hey, I know this is exactly how it's going to sound on the devices. And, devices are constantly evolving. We see people investing into a lot of headphones, into a lot of earbuds. But what is interesting, I mean, what we do is we make sure we put all of that capability into the device, into the smartphone itself. And so irrespective of whatever earbud or headphones they use, they're able to get that top experience, the full experience, the full Atmos experience. And the other area that we've been focused a lot is in recent time is on the music side. Music has been a stereo experience for the last 40 years or so. It hasn't really changed. While the cinema experience evolved and the living room experience evolved over time, the music experience did not really evolve over time. And with us bringing Atmos to that experience, I mean that's a tremendous opportunity, and the response that we've been seeing in the market from content creators, from services and consumers has been fantastic. And and music and the smartphone is the natural home for music, right? Like in the case of podcast also, the smartphone is the natural home. Yes, people do hear it on in their living rooms and on other devices, but it's really the smartphone which is at the center of that listening experience. And so really being able to work and enable the content creators and the services to be really able to leverage the device capabilities to the fullest, and really be able to make sure that all the work that they're doing is being accurately played back or represented onto these devices. So I think that's the control that content creators need, because they are extremely passionate about their craft. They spend months and years in creating a piece of content. So they're very passionate about creation and also how that content is experienced. And we're able to provide them the control to make sure that they know how these things are going to be experienced on different devices.
Yeah, Lokesh, if I could have you jump in here again, we were talking a little bit earlier about how technology is being used to liberate seamless experiences as such, and within that, when you look at it from your point of view, how important is audio really in delivering those immersive experiences for the digital natives as such? What's your take on the overall, aspect of immersive experiences in terms of audio and video?
I'm quite sold. As I told you, I have been experimenting a lot. I have been investing a lot, specifically because I believe, video per se will become more and more engaging with people. So be it on a hands-free behavior, just holding your phone or putting the earplugs in or watching in living room devices. So one part is obviously going to be what you see, but how you feel that immersive audio experience, that's going to be a game changer. And the more and more experiences that people are going to get with the rich audio, they are not going to basically look at those pirated bad copies with bad audio.
Right.
So yeah, I'm basically interested to enhance and to ensure that it is as great as possible on delivery pipe, is because of the fact I want to counter piracy by the most amazing way possible. That is ensuring that it's not worth watching it via pirates.
No, well said. And I get your point also, like, and once you experience that, it's tough to go back, to the way things were. It's that immersiveness really comes to the fore. And once you're used to it, it's there's no turning back at all. You demand more and more.
You try
And
watching a 480p video now. You try watching a
yeah,
480p video on your large screen TV, and then you're like, I don't want to do this to myself.
Gaurav, we spoke about this. Again, I'm interested in hearing more from a podcast point of view. How do advanced audio technologies, enable you? Why are they important for, a medium like podcast as such? Of course, audio is key for the user experience, but beyond that, what is that this is delivering for you? What's that X factor? And is the consumer really ready for such experiences? Like our research, as I mentioned, does point that digital natives demand the best. That's something we have seen, and this is the age group of 18 to 24. But I would love to hear from you in terms of what's your take on immersive experiences as such.
Absolutely, Prabhu. The thing here is this. Audio, as we often joke in our office, that audio is actually the visual medium. So you have and podcasting, storytelling, audio storytelling, particularly if you're doing it in the documentary genre or even in the fictional genre with multiple genres like crime, romance, relationship, etc. The technology actually makes the difference in storytelling as well as in the experience from the consumer's point of view or the listener's point of view. Say, for instance, if you have to describe a crime scene in audio, and please bear in mind that audio is minus the visual. For the listeners, he has only the ears. So whatever is being administered to his ears has to be done in a manner that actually transports him into almost like a real life situation. So he is not unlike television or unlike video. He doesn't have the assistance of the visuals to actually tell him the story. In this case, it's that is where the technology actually brings in a lot of edge. So a technology like a Dolby Atmos actually enables the listener to get a real life experience of what is happening without actually getting to see it. The technology and the script are the two critical components of powerful audio storytelling. It's a writer's medium and it's a technology's medium. The writer tells the story in a manner that the listener will probably be starting to imagine things which otherwise she would have seen on video, and the technology actually brings in that experience where she immerses into that situation without actually seeing anything of those, only through hearing. And that is why technology, immersive technology particularly, is absolutely critical for the success of audio storytelling. Not success is not the right word here, for audio storytelling to be more and more impactful. And as we progress, and solutions so rapid, which is good, because it's become disruptively positive in terms of audio technology and immersive technology. I think things are going to get infinitesimally better in the coming months and years.
So Siddharth, the first question that I had for you was, until the pandemic, there was a niche audience that was focused on audio and podcast consumption as such. It was, and it still is actually mostly music that dominates audio streaming. So in the course of the pandemic, how do you see the evolving trends as such from your vantage point?
So thanks, Prabhu, for this. I think it's a very, very valid question on what have been the changing habits and how has that impacted the entire audio ecosystem, or you'd call as a music ecosystem. So let's talk about the fact that from an India perspective today, if you were to look at YouTube as well from a music perspective, there are roughly about already 250 to 300 million consumers who are consuming some form of a music service today. Obviously, the largest portion of this is audio driven, where the customers consuming the offering on music. We've seen massive growths in tier 2, tier 3 markets in India, where consumption has been exponential. Okay. This also has had a sizable growth in the regional music market, because as we're going tier 2, tier 3 markets, it's the local language and the local content of that region that tends to start taking shape. The other big change in COVID has happened is that you're aware that Indian music comes out of our movies. And because there were not large movies being released, what ended up happening was that the big area of non-film music started to grow exponentially. And that's why you've seen a lot of artists come out to concerts, record a lot of independent music, which is now starting to really, really take shape. We were aware that at one time it was the Punjabi music category, which where most of the non-film music came from. But here we're seeing a large change to that entire format, because now across India, there is a lot of non-film music being created. The other area which has been looked at is the consumers wanting better quality of content. So in a typical streaming environment, you would be happy with a 128K stream, but as consumers had better connectivity, they were at home, they were largely on broadband and other networks. We've seen consumers go up to ask for a high quality of output, and that also results in what is then the hardware and the device that you have, and how does that play out for the user? Because music experience is something that the user is wanting to seek
Yeah.
within that construct. So that's a big play to this.
So,
And that's also the reason why we did this larger play out with Dolby, where we felt that there was an opportunity to bring in a new set of technologies to be able to give a better consumer experience through various devices.
and that's something which we have seen in our study also, especially when you look at the context of smartphones, it's usually been the camera and battery and all of those specs which dominate the conversation. But slowly in the course of pandemic, we are seeing audio also getting into the mix and audio getting integrated into the digital lifestyle of the youth as such. So this is a category which is very high on content creation and content consumption as such. So how do you see the trend there? Do you see those nuances in terms of understanding around audio with this young demographic as such?
So there is no doubt that this consumer is not only coming and starting to do immersive consumption. There's a lot of personalization, playlisting that's happening. That playlisting is resulting in a lot more habit formation. Other big place where we've seen a lot of music starting to be used, you're aware of this entire short video space phenomena, where
Mhm.
music becomes a big underlying layer for the UGC creation of those 15 seconds, 20 seconds videos that you flip literally
Yeah, yeah,
on.
yeah.
There the youth have literally anchored a lot of that content creation under the music space. So there we see a lot of great social media interest being created around the overall music space in play.
I just wanted to, follow up on that and ask you, so given that, do you see the youth actually getting involved in understanding the nuances better in terms of audio? Do you see that happening?
So the way we look at it is that the consumers are very smart. If they've got connectivity and they've got devices that support better quality of playout, they tend to upgrade, and that's something that we've seen. Today, our linkage of a better quality of playout comes from the fact that if the customer is a free customer vis-a-vis a premium customer, if he's a premium customer, he ends up getting true HD
Mhm.
quality of. Okay, that is the comparative that's being laid out here as well. And with better technology, better experiences coming on devices, and better technology and frameworks coming on accessories, all of that is adding up to a better consumer experience. And that is something that consumers are extensively looking at. And if you have the ability to bring your service, your music service out with great product experience, which gives the consumer at the end of the day a great offering, that's something that the consumer is willing to today not only chance upon, but he is extensively looking to actually bring that into his overall mixer.
Got it. And do you see these trends, this inflection that we have seen over the pandemic? Do you see these trends staying in the times ahead in terms of audio inflection?
Without doubt, the overall inflection in the music space has already happened, Prabhu. And trust me, it's not because of the pandemic. In fact, if you ask me, with less film music being released, our overall, yes, we've had growth and all of that because a lot more consumers have come into the digital space. But I believe with the opening of the COVID era, and the fact that films are starting, theaters are opening, back to back great content is being released, this will only act as a catalyst for growth.
I think those were the questions which I had.
Thanks, Prabhu.
So I think very quickly, that was great on Siddharth part. I did wish that he was here with us, but couldn't. Pankaj, if I could have you very quickly, last thoughts. We are over time now, so I would want to go with you, Pankaj, and then followed by Lokesh and Gaurav for any parting thoughts. And Navnit, you have been kind enough to stay on. Really appreciate that. Yeah.
No, thanks, Prabhu. I think it's a fantastic time. It's a time where a lot of habits are changing, content consumption is changing, it's growing, device capabilities are really ramping up, and it's great that we're getting to work with fantastic content creators, great device makers, great services to really be able to enhance and really revolutionize the whole experience. And we've also seen, as people have said, that people can't go back to the old, but we've also seen that higher quality leads to higher consumption. So people tend to consume more when the quality is also higher. So I think it's a great time to be, part of doing this.
Great. Lokesh, parting thoughts from your end? How do you
Well,
see the
the action of the decade has started. Let me put it this way. How long can the satellite TV hold on? How long can cinemas hold on? Because people are not going to leave their living rooms. That's going to happen very, very clearly.
Gaurav, what about you? How do you see the future?
Well, I think, as I said, we are fast approaching towards the high noon of audio. It's a great time to be a content creator, both from a platform point of view, from a market point of view, but because OTT platforms, new technologies, and also very deep smartphone penetration and smartphone acquisition costs are also relatively have remained stable or coming down. So that is only going to increase discoverability of content. And I think it's a great time to be a content creator, particularly in the audio space.
Lovely. That's the way to conclude. It's really appreciate your time, Navnit. As I mentioned, I think we slightly over time. Really appreciate you being here with us today. Appreciate that, Pankaj, Lokesh, and Gaurav. Thanks for all those invaluable insights. I really had a blast talking to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us on this forum today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Prabhu,
Thanks.
and thank you everybody on the panel.